Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our webinar today on Australia. My name is Danielle Coco. I'm the Marketing and Communications Director at SUSTA. And we are excited. Today we are going to hear from a few of our guest speakers. We have Betsy Riggs with IMEX, who is here with her colleagues, Sean Paulson and Oscar Reck. They are going to talk about the U.S. Pavilion at Fine Food Australia, which is in Melbourne this year in September. And before Betsy gives her presentation, we will also hear from Renee Pizzuta. She is with the USDA office that is based in Australia. She's in Canberra, and she pre-recorded a video for this webinar just to talk more about the Australian market. It's a great video. I've watched it several times now, learning more about Australia, and yeah, it's great. So why don't we, I'll let Betsy introduce herself, and then we'll hear from Renee.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Betsy Riggs. I'm with IMEX Management, and we're the organizers of the USA Pavilion at Fine Food Australia. And I'm here with me today is Sean Paulson. He's going to be handling the operations for this show, working hand in hand with exhibitors to make sure you have everything you need at the show. And also Oscar, he's helping us on the sales side, works directly with mostly companies and U.S. Departments of Ag. But before we go into more detail about IMEX and the USA Pavilion, I will start the video.
Hi, everyone. My name's Renee, and I'm the Agricultural Marketing Specialist based at the U.S. Embassy in Canberra. Thanks for joining the SUSTA webinar. I apologize I can't join you in person, but I hope you have a very informative session, and I look forward to meeting you all at Fine Food in Melbourne in September. Jumping right in, Australia is an extremely strong market for U.S. consumer-oriented products. In 2023, the U.S. exported $1.2 billion to Australia. This chart represents the trade since 2008. You can see there's been some fluctuation, but significant increase in the last 15 years. In 2023, the top 5 exports to Australia were pork and pork products, dairy products, distilled spirits, soup and other food preparations, and dog food. Australia has proven to be an appealing and profitable market for U.S. companies. It has a strong economy and an open and transparent trade and investment environment. It's the world's 14th largest economy and one of the highest levels of per capita GDP. It is currently ranked second for median wealth per adult. It was ranked the #1 country for many years, but was just overtaken by Belgium. Prior to 2022, Australia recorded 29 years of consecutive growth. And recently, the Australian dollar has been quite weak, with $1 Australian equaling approximately 66 US cents. Australia has a population of 26.5 million people. There are 6 states and 2 territories. It's actually a very similar size to the continental US, with an area of 3 million square miles. Most people don't realize this because a majority of the population live in major cities located on the coast. About 80% of the population live in urban areas. Sydney and Melbourne are the most populated cities. Sydney is currently the largest city, but they estimate Melbourne will take over Sydney in the near future. And depending on who you ask, they may say Melbourne already overtook Sydney, especially if you talk with anyone in Melbourne at Fine Food this year. A brief overview of the political landscape. Australia is a federal parliamentary constitutional democracy. A federal election is held every 3 years. The Labour Party came into office for the first time in 9 years in May 2022. The Prime Minister, who is currently Anthony Albanese, is chosen by the elected members of the party that won a majority of seats in the House of Representatives. The elected party can change leadership during the term. Electoral enrollment and voting is compulsory in Australia. Agricultural trade is regulated by the Department of Agriculture, Fisheries, and Forestry, DAF for short. It's also regulated by Food Standards Australia and New Zealand, which is FSANZ for short. Australia shortened everything. DAF is similar to the USDA, and FSANZ develops standards that regulate the use of ingredients, processing aids, coloring, additives, vitamins, and minerals. They're also responsible for some food labeling requirements, and as the name suggests, they oversee both Australia and New Zealand. The US and Australia have a free trade agreement, which allows most products to come in tariff-free. As I mentioned earlier, consumer-oriented agricultural products in 2023 were 1.2 billion US dollars. Consumer-oriented agricultural products were the most popular agricultural products to be exported to Australia, with 78% of the total ag exports. US exports to Australia are very diversified. Product categories range from dairy, pork, distilled spirits, and many more, as you can see on this chart. On the other hand, Australia exported 3.1 billion US dollars to the US in 2023, but 92% of those products were made up of beef, lamb, and wine. The US has a lot more opportunity for a range of products. Some of the key US products that were exported to Australia in 2023 were pork and pork products that was valued at 233 million US dollars, dairy products that was valued at 182 million US dollars, and distilled spirits, which had a value of 138 million US dollars. If your product category is not listed here, do not rule out Australia. There's so much opportunity in the market here. This information was taken from GATS, which is a publicly available database provided by FAS. To find it, you just have to Google FAS GATS and it will come up. If you have any questions on what to import or how to find this information, my email will be at the end of this presentation, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions. The grocery sector is dominated by two companies that own 65% of the market share. There's Woolworths, also known as Woolies, and Kohl's. Smaller chains, independents, and Costco are creating more competition. For example, Aldi entered the market in the early 2000s and now has about 10% of the market share. Kohl's and Woolies have been rolling out smaller formats to appeal to grab-and-go quick service. Most of these can be found in the major cities. One big difference between the US and Australia retail markets are convenience stores. There's stores like 7-Eleven, but there's no Walgreens or CVS's. Pharmacies are strictly for medicines, and there's no one-stop shop like Target. You go to the grocery store to buy groceries, and you go to the clothes store to buy clothes. There's no store that has it all except for Costco. There are many strengths for exporting to Australia. US culture is well accepted and very similar to Australia. There are no language barriers, even though it may seem like a translator is required at times. It is easy to communicate. US products have a good reputation, and horticultural products have the advantage of opposite growing seasons. There's also the free trade agreement that I mentioned earlier that allows many products to come in tariff-free. And Australian consumers are experimental and desire new and innovative products. Along with the strengths, there's weaknesses to be considered. Australia has a very strict quarantine requirements, and import permits are required for many products, with some ingredients being prohibited. You can check the import regulations on DAF's Biosecurity Import Conditions website, BICON for short. It's a really simple database. You just type in what you're trying to import into Australia, and it might ask a few further details, but it'll come up with the conditions, what's required for it, and if an import permit is required. Australia also has significant agricultural products that are similar to the US, but again, we have that counter-seasonal advantage. The labeling and advertising laws are also different, and that's regulated by FSANZ. But one of the good parts is that your food label can actually be stickered over the US nutrition label, so you don't have to print out all new nutrition labels. It could just be stickered over. There's also a pretty big Buy Australia campaign, and country of origin labeling is compulsory. So that's just another thing to keep in mind. And the reason why we're here today, why should you export at Fine Food Australia? Here we have a picture of the USA Pavilion last year with Dan Hunter from the Texas Department of Agriculture, who represented SUSTA. He's speaking with Counsel General Elder, who is based in Sydney. She came around and talked to all of the exhibitors last year. So Fine Food is a USDA endorsed trade show with a dedicated USA pavilion, and more details will be provided by SUSTA and IMAX either before or after this presentation. Fine Food is the largest food and beverage trade show in the Southern Hemisphere, and due to Australia's size and cost to travel, it's the best opportunity to meet with buyers and importers. U.S. exhibitors also have an exclusive briefing presented by a law firm based in Melbourne called Food Legal. We've already confirmed that they would love to do the presentation this year. So they specialize in assisting companies with Australian regulations for health claims, food fortification, country of origin labeling, and they also work with importers to make sure the food label is correct. They also check ingredients and make sure that they're compliant for Australia. Another advantage to exhibiting at the U.S. Pavilion is we hold a cocktail reception for U.S. exhibitors and invite importers, buyers, and distributors to attend and network with our exhibitors. We also try and get the ambassador or counsel general, which was the case last year, to attend the event and give a little speech at the reception. Here we just have a few pictures from the show last year. So the top two are photos of the U.S. Pavilion. And then the bottom, we just have a little picture of a sign from our cocktail reception. And the bottom right is our briefing from a law firm that gave their presentation in Sydney. As I'm sure you're aware, our office writes multiple reports on the Australian industry. I write all the marketing reports, which are listed here. The link below will give you access to the reports from around the world, so not just the marketing reports. You can also find any commodity reports or voluntary reports. They can all be found on the FAS GAIN website. Thank you again for taking the time to attend this webinar. I hope I persuaded you to come and visit Australia. My email is listed here, so please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions, you want some more information, or you just want to chat. I'm looking forward to hearing from you and hope to see lots of SUSTA companies in Melbourne in September. Thanks. Bye.
YouTube. Yeah, such a good presentation. So interesting. I love seeing the map of Australia overlaid on top of the US. I did not realize that geographically it was almost the same size. So, but anyway, lots of great information. And we'll be sharing Renee's email address. I know that was kind of quick, so I'm sure you did not have time to write that down. Her email address, as well as some of those reports. And of course, you can reach out to me if you want that full roster of reports. I'm happy to pull those for you. All right, well, now we're going to hear from Betsy a little bit more about the US Pavilion at Fine Food Australia.
Yeah, thank you, Danielle. As mentioned, we're with IMEX, organizers of the USA Pavilion at Fine Food Australia. Sorry, trying to change my screen. There we go. So today I'll talk just a little bit about our team at IMEX and then the show in general, Fine Food Australia, and then specifically some of the benefits of being in the USA Pavilion. Questions and answers we'll do kind of all at the end. So when I'm done with my presentation, I'll pass it back to Danielle to speak a little bit more specifics about, exhibiting with SUSTA. Here's our team, led by Eric Halston, who's our Chief Commercial Officer, and Claire Groh, our Chief Operating Officer. And then myself, I'm Operations Manager for our food and bev shows. And then as I introduced, we have Sean Paulson, our International Operations Coordinator, who will be working directly with exhibitors to really make sure that you have everything you need have all the information about the show, deadlines, and then things for your booth if you need signage, extra furniture, things like that. He'll be your direct contact. And then Oscar Reck, who's our international sales coordinator. And again, he's helping with sales directly to companies and departments of ag. I think for this group, SUSTA already has kind of their own set of booths that they have secured for their companies. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So at IMEX, we work alongside USDA and SUSTA to make sure that we offer an invaluable experience at Fine Food Australia. So Fine Food this year will take place September 2nd through 5th. It'll take place in Melbourne. This is one of those shows that kind of switches between cities. So this year it's in Melbourne, last year it was in Sydney, and then next year, it'll go back to Sydney. But Melbourne and Sydney, I actually have not been to Melbourne, but my understanding from talking to my colleague who has, very similar to Sydney, which I was there last year, and just a very approachable city, very safe, walkable. It's a long way to get there, but once you get there, you almost feel like you're in a very nice American city. It's very enjoyable to be there. And Melbourne in particular has a vibrant dining scene. They're known for a lot of their good restaurants. So I think for this group in food and bev, we can all appreciate that. Some statistics from last year, Fine Food Australia had more than 26,000 visitors, almost 1,000 exhibitors, and we had 15 exhibiting companies in the USA Pavilion. As I tell a lot of people, I think Fine Food Australia is a little bit of a hidden gem. I mean, the pavilion, I suppose, is not one of our larger ones, but it really has a lot to offer. And I think companies, once they go, are really happy that they did, and they continue, to repeat and come back. Some of our results just from the USA Pavilion last year, companies reported 154 serious contacts made, 88 business meetings were conducted, over $5 million in projected sales, and that doesn't include some on-site sales that took place. And then a rating of 4.86 out of 5 for on-site experience. Again, and I know Renee touched a little bit on these, but some of the benefits of being in the USA Pavilion, prime location, we are right in front of the hall. IMEX works hard to negotiate a great location for our exhibitors. The USA banner and identification, you can see from the hanging banners and lighting. We try really hard to make sure that anywhere within the hall, someone knows where to find the USA companies. All of our booths come with a full furniture booth package. So, you can certainly always order extra things, but at a minimum, that you're going to have, a table, chairs, a company sign. Really, at least the basics are included in your booth. On-site assistance by USDA and IMEX. Both USDA and at least one or two people from our team are there before and throughout the show to help you with any questions or issues that might come up during the show. And then also, as Renee mentioned, because it is USDA endorsed, they provide a market briefing. They provide a really nice reception during the show. And then, of course, you're listed with the official show organizers, but we also do our own directory for everyone in the USA Pavilion. Both a printed guide that's available like in hard copy during the show, but we also have an online listing where you can link videos and social media and, have a full listing about your company as well. And then USA Pavilion appointed freight forwarder. I would say with Australia, one of the maybe challenges is both with sampling and freight. There are certainly rule followers. And so there are some rules that you need to follow, and it can be a little complicated, but I would say we work with Win Expo. We've been working with them for many, many years. They've done the show many, many times, and they're a great, great resource and, happy to help you walk through the process. And then also with sampling regulations, there is some paperwork to complete, but we can help you with that. And in fact, our plan for this year is to have a webinar before the show to give you an opportunity to ask questions about any of the sampling documents. We've even thought about making it sort of a working webinar where we can actually help you complete those documents right during the webinar. And we'll have someone from the show on that webinar as well to answer questions. And then specifically for SUSTA, this is our floor plan going into 2024. And you can see that SUSTA has 4 booths secured with an opportunity to expand specifically for their pavilion. And that's all I have for today, and happy to answer any questions at the end of our webinar. And I will pass it on to Danielle.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, yes, yes, okay, good. And can you see my screen? No. Hang on, maybe, sorry. I was jumping the gun. There we go. Okay, hello. Thank you, Betsy. Yes, so I think as Betsy and Renee shared, Fine Food Australia is, I think Renee said, the largest show for food and beverage in the Southern Hemisphere, which is pretty impressive. And but the USA Pavilion is not massive. I feel like our companies really get a lot of attention, and we have a great relationship with Australia. So being in that US area, I think lends a lot of credibility to our companies and the SUSTA Pavilion. So I just wanted to walk everybody through what exhibiting with SUSTA is like and what is offered. So as Betsy mentioned, we have the potential for 6 booths in our pavilion. Corner booths are a little over $2,000, and the inline booths are just under $2,000. And what you get for that is the 9 square meter booth package with standard furniture. So I think it's, a table with chairs as well as the podium, and, a couple of shelves. There is also a market briefing and tour. We also arrange one-on-one meetings with buyers in advance. And importantly, there is a $500 reimbursement for shipping your samples and materials to the show. So I know Betsy mentioned that working with a freight forwarder and, maybe the shipping would be like the biggest challenge, but just know that there's also, in addition to their assistance with the logistics, that we will offset some of the expense of getting the samples there, or maybe the entire expense, depending on how much it is. And then I also included a few photos from last year from the Sydney show, some of our companies who were exhibiting there, and SUSTA ended up having a nice little area as well. There you can see Dan from Texas. But we had extra tables and chairs there. So if you needed to have maybe like a quieter conversation with somebody, there was an extra space, with SUSTA where you could go and have a little more of like a lounge area. To find, all of our events, but specifically this one on our website, you just click on the events tab and scroll down to Fine Food Australia, and then you'll see everything there, a little bit about the market, and then details about the show and exactly what comes with, registering with SUSTA, everything I just went over. And then of course, this is where you register as well. So I just wanted to highlight that in case anybody isn't familiar with our website, but also, everything, all the support that we offer. And then of course we have people at the show with you as well, just making sure that it's all going smoothly and, assisting you there, in addition, of course, to IMEX being there. And then, of course, we have our cost share program. So this is where we can reimburse companies half of certain international marketing expenses. One of the more popular things and activities that we support companies with using cost share is exhibiting at major trade shows around the world. So, even if you're coming with us to the show, like this show, for example, and, we're already reducing the cost significantly for the booths, about $2,000, you can still apply to get 50% of that fee back. So you would include that in your cost share application. Travel is also an eligible expense. So that would be for 2 company employees or company representatives. It's your airfare, your lodging, meals and incidentals per diem. And I included a little snapshot of what that looks like. We talk a lot about that when we talk about the cost share program. But what that is it's a way for SUSTA and other USDA cooperators to provide a reimbursement for meals and incidentals, things like, taxis and stuff like that, without having to get all of your receipts. So it's a flat rate depending on the city that you're going to, and we can reimburse 50% of that rate per day. And then, there are a lot of other things that we can support you with, expenses that come with exhibiting at trade shows, which, they all add up. It's things like the badge scanners. If you want to create branded items, we have, for instance, like an ice cream company that has plastic ice cream scoops with the name of their company. The things that you're going to want to hand out at the show. If you have to hire somebody to help work your booth, those expenses are also 50% reimbursable. Advertising in the trade show directory. If you have to rent like a hot plate or something to help prepare your samples, those kinds of rentals are also eligible. So it's a pretty expansive list of things that we can help with through the cost share program. As you know, SUSTA supports small businesses, and this is really the USDA's way of making sure that small businesses can get to these big shows and meet with importers in these markets and really have a shot at expanding internationally. So I just wanted to break down the cost share application a little bit. I'm not going to get into too much detail, but you access the application in your MySUSTA account. You would have had to have selected that you were interested in cost share. Then our director for that program gives you access. So you just log in, you go there, you would click Add International Marketing Plan to create your Australia marketing plan. So when companies apply for cost share in their annual application, you apply by country. So you would say in Australia, I'm going to do Fine Food Australia. My booth is $2,000. My travel expenses, I estimated at about, a little over 9,000 for 2 people. Point of sale materials, anything related to that show or that market. Maybe you're also going to do advertising later in the year in Australia. You would add that in here. So it's all done by country, and you can, submit several different country plans in your application. And you estimate a total in advance because this application is in advance, and then you're requesting that SUSTA allocate 50% of that amount for you after the event takes place. So it's pretty straightforward, but it is a federal program and we're reimbursing taxpayer dollars. So when you put on your taxpayer hat, I think you're happy that we do ask a lot of questions and make sure that everybody who's using the programs is following the rules. In addition to that, there is a $250 application fee when you submit your application. And then the amount that you request in reimbursement, you pay a 6% admin fee on that 50% amount. So if you tell me, next year or this year, I'm spending $20,000 total in eligible expenses, I'm going to request $10,000 from SUSTA, you would pay a $600 fee upfront for us to allocate the funds for you. And then the only other thing that you submit in the application process are your packaging and labels for the products that you want to promote. You do this every 5 years. We just, need to see it, make sure that you are promoting products that meet the eligibility requirements. There are US products that say somewhere on there, made in USA, product of Georgia, something that, the explicit US origin statement. And then, once you're contracted in the program, you go to the trade show, or, maybe you're going to apply and not do a trade event like that, and you're going to have an advertising campaign or whatever it is. After the promotional activity ends, then you submit your expense claim. You don't wait to the end of the year. So you would submit all of your invoices, your proofs of payment, and the proof of activity, which, would be a photo of your booth at the trade show, let's say, just letting us know that you actually were there promoting your products and, doing all the things that you said you were doing in your application. You submit those full expense claims, and then, SUSTA processes the expense and wires the 50% reimbursement. As I said, there are regulations, and depending on what you're applying for, we'll need to see certain things in your expense claim, and it's all detailed in the cost share manual that we publish each year. But our staff is on hand. We're always, I would say our cost share staff spends the majority of their time just servicing our companies, walking companies through this process, making sure that everybody is aware of what's required. So it's, it's what we're here for, is really supporting you and getting you into these programs and making sure that, again, you have access. So that is what I wanted to share, just a little bit about how SUSTA can help you get to the show and, take advantage of all of these perks. Here's my contact information, but I know you all hear from me quite often through email, so I'm sure you have my contact. But now, if anybody has questions, we would love to open the floor via, you would be typing in your questions in the chat or the Q&A boxes, because everybody's muted. But we would love to hear from you and answer your questions. And if it's something for Renee, that's more about, the market statistics and things for Australia, we can always either connect you with her via email, or I can just shoot you her email after the webinar. So, share. Let's see if we get any questions. It's funny, I've been speaking with some of our companies who've done this show in the past with us, and just about the Australian market in general. And Betsy and I were also talking about this, that, it's, in addition to them enjoying US products, that, our grocery shelves and supermarkets probably have, or they definitely do have such a wide variety. We might have 10 flavors of this one product, whereas some of these other markets, the variety isn't there, and there's really a space for American products to fulfill those needs. And really, I don't know, we just have that kind of variety and the capacity to offer that. So, yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I think we have a question.
Yeah. Do the major retailers go to the show?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't have a list offhand. I'm sure Renee would know that offhand, and we can certainly get that for you, who you can expect to be there. But yeah, I'm confident that, as she said, this is really like the big show in the region. So definitely all of the big buyers will be there.
Yeah, and it sounds like it's a really consolidated market, where there's the two major players and then, some independents as well. But I would imagine, especially the, Kohl's and Woolies folks are there in full force.
And I wanted to ask Danielle, I don't know if we had another question, but if not, do you have any deadlines like for being in the SUSTA Pavilion that companies should know about?
Yes, it is, I believe, June 2nd is our deadline. And we base our deadlines off of, trade show deadlines and things. We want to make sure that you get into the directory and, that all the requirements are met. So we have, a little over a month. So if there are more, really specific questions, we can always chat offline in the coming weeks, and help you determine if it's a good fit. Is SUSTA able to guide and help brands recognize if there is space for the types of products we have, or if it is an already saturated market? We can provide sort of what Renee was sharing with all the GATS statistics that USDA publishes. We can help you navigate that system and like pull reports and things like that. We also have access to something called Euromonitor that can often provide similar statistics, you know, of recent exports from the US into the market. So I would say somewhat. It might not like fully, you know, answer all of your questions, but we can certainly provide all of the export statistics that we have access to. And if anybody wants that kind of help, please reach out to me afterwards, and I'm happy to, you know, better understand your product type and what category you fall into and pull those kinds of reports with you or for you.
I also think Renee would be able to give information in terms of what she knows buyers are looking for, and maybe if they're, you know, if she sees just being on the ground sort of a gap.
Yep. It's a wealthy country, you know, the free trade agreement. I think most of our products are tariff free. Yeah, I mean, other than the distance, it seems like that is, you know, probably the you know, the major challenge. It's just far. Has questions, then we will go ahead and wrap up today. I hope everybody enjoyed it and, you know, has learned a lot more about the Australian market and the trade show. And then of course, how we can help you get there. I will be sending out an email either later today or tomorrow morning to let you know when the recording and the presentations are up on our website. It'll be behind your SUSTA login under past webinars. So keep an eye out for that. And then of course, just let me know, you know, what answers or what questions we can answer for you. Yeah, and if there's nothing else.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Betsy, Sean, and Oscar for joining us, and everybody in the audience. We appreciate you being here, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.